You walk through the world feeling like a target. Every morning you scan the news and absorb reports of violence, accidents, disease outbreaks, and senseless tragedies, and a cold fear settles into your chest because you know it could happen to you. You check the locks twice, you avoid certain neighborhoods, you sanitize your hands compulsively, and still the anxiety follows you like a shadow because you understand that chaos does not announce itself. It simply strikes. Joseph Murphy, the architect of mental law, revealed a truth that shatters this entire paradigm of vulnerability. You are not a victim of a random, hostile universe. Vulnerability is not a physical fact written into the fabric of reality. It is a mental consent, a frequency you are broadcasting without knowing it. You are only vulnerable because your mental frequency matches the frequency of the danger you fear. Murphy taught that you possess the ability to construct what he called an invisible shield, a specific vibrational wall around your body and affairs that mechanically repels negativity just as one magnet repels another magnet of the same pole. When this shield is active, harm cannot touch you. It does not fight its way through your defenses. It slides off, diverted by a law as precise as gravity. The pain you carry is the exhausting anxiety of living in a chaotic world where danger feels omnipresent and unpredictable. You have been taught to protect yourself through external means, better locks, better insurance, better avoidance strategies, but none of these measures give you true peace because the fear remains lodged in your consciousness like a splinter. You are constantly on guard, monitoring threats, calculating risks, and the mental exhaustion of this perpetual vigilance drains your life force more effectively than any actual danger ever could. You are trying to dodge raindrops in a storm, jumping left and right, covering your head, running for shelter, and it is a battle you can never win because the rain is everywhere and you cannot see every drop coming. This is the futile strategy of purely physical defense in a universe that operates on mental law. Murphy's promise cuts through this exhausting cycle with surgical precision. If you invoke the circle of protection, you become waterproof. You do not dodge the danger misses you. It is not that you move faster or hide better. It is that you occupy a different vibrational frequency, and at that frequency, the danger simply cannot locate you. You become invisible to it, not through camouflage, but through what Murphy called the law of divine immunity. This is not wishful thinking or spiritual bypassing. It is the application of a mechanical principle that governs how consciousness interacts with the field of possibilities. When you raise your vibration to the frequency of absolute safety and divine protection, you create a buffer zone, a force field that lower frequencies cannot penetrate. The world operates on the principle that like attracts like, which means that fear attracts fearful circumstances, and peace attracts peaceful circumstances. And this is not poetry, but physics applied to the mental realm. You have been living at the frequency of fear, and therefore you have been a vibrational match for everything you fear, pulling it toward you through the magnetic power of your sustained emotional state. Murphy understood that protection is not about building higher walls in the physical world. It is about building an impenetrable wall in the mental world. And when that wall is in place, the physical world has no choice but to reflect it back to you as safety, as immunity, as a charmed life where harm consistently fails to find you. In this video, we will execute what I call the Fortress Protocol, the exact method for building a psychic perimeter that no lower energy can penetrate. A mental architecture so precisely constructed that negativity bounces off it like light off a mirror. This is not a vague instruction to think positive thoughts. This is a systematic procedure for raising your vibrational frequency to a level where danger cannot exist in your reality. A technique that Murphy used himself and taught to thousands who walked through fire and emerged untouched. You will learn the specific visualization, the specific decree, and the specific mental posture that activates this shield, and you will understand why it works through the unbreakable logic of mental law. This is not faith without understanding. This is faith built on a foundation of cause and effect, of vibrational mechanics, of the precise relationship between consciousness and manifestation. But I must warn you, there is a Trojan horse, a specific emotion that opens the gate from the inside and lets the enemy in, even when you believe you have constructed the perfect defense. This breach is so subtle that most people never see it coming, and it is the reason why the shield fails for those who attempt this work without complete understanding. In part 4 of this video, I will teach you how to spot this breach, how to recognize when you are sabotaging your own protection, and how to seal the wall permanently so that nothing can ever penetrate it again. This is the difference between those who are occasionally safe and those who live in permanent immunity. Right now, as a declaration of your commitment to this work, I ask you to comment below with the words, "I am safe." These 3 words are not just a statement, they are a command to your subconscious mind, a signal to the universe that you are claiming your divine right to protection, and they activate the first layer of the shield even before you learn the full protocol. Subscribe to this channel if you are ready to stop living as a target and start living as one who is untouchable, and click the bell icon, because the knowledge that follows in our future videos will layer protection upon protection until you become a fortress that no negativity can breach. The work begins now. The central concept that Murphy built his entire teaching of protection upon is what we must call vibrational immunity. And to understand this concept is to understand why some people seem to walk through danger unscathed while others are struck by tragedy repeatedly. Murphy taught that the universe operates on the fundamental principle that like attracts like, which means that every thought, every emotion, every sustained mental state broadcasts a frequency into the invisible field of consciousness, and that frequency acts as a homing beacon that draws circumstances of a matching vibration toward you. This is not metaphor. This is the mechanical operation of mental law, as precise and unyielding as the law of gravity. Accidents and violence do not happen randomly. They vibrate at a specific frequency, the frequency of fear, chaos, anger, and disorder, and they can only manifest in the experience of someone who is broadcasting that same frequency, someone who has tuned their consciousness to the channel where these events exist. If you vibrate at the frequency of peace, order, and absolute security, you become invisible to danger, because you exist in what amounts to a parallel dimension, a reality track where those lower frequency events simply do not occur. The shield that Murphy spoke of is not a physical barrier made of energy that you can see or touch. It is a high-frequency aura, a sustained state of consciousness that incinerates low-frequency thoughts before they can condense into physical events in your life. Think of it as a filter that surrounds your entire being, and any thought of harm that approaches this filter is immediately dissolved because it cannot survive in the presence of such a high vibration. This is why Murphy insisted that the key to protection was not in defensive action, but in sustained conviction, in the unwavering knowing that you are safe because you have placed yourself under divine law. The mechanism of this protection works through what we might call frequency separation, where your consciousness operates at such a different level from the consciousness of danger that there is no point of contact, no bridge between the two realities. Imagine 2 radio stations broadcasting simultaneously in the same city. One is broadcasting classical music at 91.5 FM, and the other is broadcasting heavy metal at 105.3 FM, and if your radio is tuned to 91.5, you will never hear the heavy metal no matter how loudly it is broadcasting, because you are not on that frequency. This is exactly how vibrational immunity works in the field of consciousness. When you maintain the frequency of divine protection, you cannot pick up the signal of danger. And more importantly, danger cannot pick up your signal because you are not broadcasting on a frequency it can detect. Murphy understood that most people live their lives tuned to the frequency of fear without even realizing it, because they have been conditioned by a fear-based society, by media that profits from anxiety, by authority figures who maintain control through the threat of danger. Every time you watch the news and absorb stories of violence, every time you imagine worst-case scenarios, every time you check the locks with the feeling of what if someone breaks in, you are tuning your consciousness to the frequency of danger, and in that moment you are sending out a vibrational invitation to the very thing you fear. This is not victim blaming. This is the simple mechanics of how consciousness creates reality. And once you understand these mechanics, you gain the power to change the channel permanently. The shield is built not through effort but through sustained frequency maintenance, through the consistent choice to dwell in the mental atmosphere of absolute safety. The concept of vibrational immunity also explains why certain people seem to be accident-prone, while others lead charmed lives where danger consistently misses them by inches. It is not luck, it is law. The accident-prone person is living in a sustained state of anxiety, expecting disaster, imagining tragedy, and their consciousness is therefore a perfect vibrational match for accidents, so accidents find them with eerie consistency. The person with the charmed life, on the other hand, has cultivated either consciously or unconsciously a deep conviction of safety, a feeling that they are protected, that nothing can touch them, and this conviction creates a vibrational buffer that disaster cannot penetrate. Murphy was teaching us to move from unconscious accident proneness to conscious immunity, to take control of the frequency we broadcast, and therefore take control of what can manifest in our experience. The shield itself is constructed from what Murphy called substance, the invisible mental material that all manifestation is built from, and this substance takes the shape of whatever conviction you hold most strongly. If your strongest conviction is fear, the substance forms into circumstances that justify and amplify that fear. If your strongest conviction is safety, the substance forms into a protective barrier that deflects all harm. This is why Murphy emphasized the word conviction rather than hope or wish, because conviction is faith that has solidified into certainty, and only certainty has the power to command substance into a specific form. When you hold the conviction of immunity, you are not hoping to be safe. You are declaring yourself safe, and the universe has no choice but to arrange circumstances to match that declaration. The frequency of peace and security that creates this shield is not a passive, sleepy state of ignorance, where you simply refuse to acknowledge danger exists. It is an active, high-vibration state of consciousness that comes from understanding your true nature as a spiritual being under divine law. Murphy taught that you are not a random biological accident wandering through a hostile universe. You are an individualized expression of infinite intelligence, and that intelligence has built into you the same protective mechanisms that it has built into all of creation. Just as the body has an immune system that automatically attacks invaders, the consciousness has a spiritual immune system that automatically repels negativity, but this system only functions when it is activated by faith, by the recognition of your divine nature, by the conviction that you are under the protection of the same power that holds galaxies in place. Therefore, vibrational immunity is not something you must struggle to create from nothing. It is something you already possess but have been preventing from functioning through your sustained focus on fear and vulnerability. The work is not to build the shield. The work is to remove the interference, to stop broadcasting the frequency of fear, to stop identifying yourself as a vulnerable target, and to step into the knowing of your true identity as one who dwells in the secret place of the Most High. When you make this shift, the shield activates automatically because it is your natural state, your default condition when you are aligned with the truth of your being. Murphy was not teaching you to construct something foreign to your nature. He was teaching you to remove the obstacles that prevent your natural immunity from expressing itself. The analogy Murphy often used was that of light and darkness, where light does not have to fight darkness or struggle against it. Light simply enters a space, and darkness ceases to exist because darkness is not a thing in itself, but merely the absence of light. In the same way, the shield of protection does not fight against danger or struggle to keep it out. The shield simply occupies the same space where danger would manifest, and danger ceases to exist in that space because it cannot coexist with the frequency of divine protection. This is the meaning of the light of God surrounds me. It is not a poetic phrase, but a statement of vibrational fact, a recognition that when you dwell in the consciousness of God, in the frequency of the infinite, all lower frequencies are automatically neutralized by your very presence. The practical implication of this understanding is profound. You do not need to know where danger is coming from, or what form it will take in order to protect yourself from it, because the shield works on all frequencies of negativity simultaneously. You do not need a different protection for car accidents, a different protection for disease, a different protection for violence, because all of these things vibrate at the same fundamental frequency of disorder and chaos. and the single shield of divine order and divine peace neutralizes all of them. This is the efficiency of vibrational immunity, one solution that addresses all threats, one frequency that repels all lower frequencies, one conviction that creates comprehensive protection. Murphy insisted that this shield becomes stronger with practice, with sustained use, with consistent reinforcement of the conviction of safety. Every time you consciously invoke the shield, every time you declare your immunity, every time you refuse to entertain fear-based thoughts, you are thickening the protective layer around your consciousness, making it more impenetrable, more automatic, until eventually you reach a state where protection is no longer something you have to remember to activate because it has become your permanent frequency. This is the goal, not to live in constant vigilance over your thoughts, but to so thoroughly reprogram your consciousness to the frequency of safety that the shield maintains itself without effort, and you move through the world in a state of relaxed confidence, knowing at a cellular level that nothing can touch you. The concept of vibrational immunity also solves the apparent paradox of why bad things sometimes happen to good people, because goodness in the moral sense is not the same as high vibration in the spiritual sense. A person can be morally good, kind, and well-intentioned, but still live in a state of chronic fear, still identify themselves as vulnerable, still broadcast the frequency of anxiety, and therefore still attract danger despite their moral character. Murphy was teaching that protection comes not from moral righteousness, but from vibrational alignment, from dwelling in the consciousness of safety, regardless of your past actions or your moral status. This is why the shield is available to everyone equally, not as a reward for good behavior, but as a natural consequence of occupying a specific frequency. The final essential understanding of vibrational immunity is that it is immediate in its effect. The moment you shift your frequency, the moment you truly claim your protection, the shield is in place. You do not have to wait for it to build up over time. You do not have to earn it through suffering or sacrifice, and you do not have to wonder if it is working. If you can feel the peace, if you can sense the absolute safety, then the shield is functioning and you are immune in that moment. Murphy taught that consciousness is always creating in the present moment, which means that protection is always available in the present moment, and the past pattern of vulnerability has no power over you unless you continue to give it power by dwelling on it. Therefore, vibrational immunity is the foundation of all practical protection, the single concept that, when truly grasped, makes fear obsolete, makes anxiety unnecessary, and makes vulnerability impossible. It is the recognition that you are not at the mercy of a random universe, but are operating under a precise law that responds to your frequency, and when you raise that frequency to the level of divine protection, all danger falls away, not because it has been conquered, but because it can no longer find you. This is the shield Murphy spoke of, and it is available to you now, in this moment, through the simple act of claiming it with absolute conviction. To solidify this concept in your understanding, Murphy employed an analogy that makes the mechanism of the shield undeniable, the analogy of the ozone layer. And once you grasp this comparison, you will never again doubt the reality of vibrational immunity. The Earth is bombarded by deadly solar radiation every single second of every single day. Cosmic rays, ultraviolet radiation, high-energy particles that would incinerate all biological life on the surface if they reached us directly. The intensity of this radiation is so extreme that exposure to it for even minutes would cause catastrophic cellular damage, cancer, burns, and death. Yet we walk around on the surface of this planet in complete safety, growing food, raising children, living our lives with no thought of this constant barrage from space. Why are we not dead? The answer is the ozone layer, a thin band of oxygen molecules in the upper atmosphere that absorbs this radiation before it can reach the surface. The crucial point that Murphy wants you to understand is that the ozone layer does not fight the radiation, does not struggle against it, does not push it away with effort. The ozone layer simply neutralizes the radiation by its very nature, by the specific frequency at which its molecules vibrate, and the radiation that would be deadly at the surface is transformed into harmless heat long before it can touch us. This is not a battle. This is a natural function. an automatic protection that operates every second without our conscious awareness, without our effort, without our anxiety about whether it is working. We trust the ozone layer completely, even though we cannot see it, even though we have never touched it, because the evidence of its function is the simple fact that we are alive. Your conviction of safety, Murphy taught, is your mental ozone layer, and it functions in exactly the same way as the physical one. The universe is full of lower frequency thoughts, negative possibilities, potential disasters, and these exist in the field of consciousness, just as radiation exists in space. And if these thoughts reached your reality directly, they would manifest as accidents, violence, disease, and tragedy in your physical experience. But when you cultivate a thick layer of conviction, when you build up the substance of absolute faith in your divine protection, this layer absorbs the negative thoughts before they can condense into physical events. The conviction does not fight the negativity. It simply neutralizes it by its very nature, by the high frequency at which it vibrates, and the danger that would be devastating if it reached your reality is dissolved into harmless mental static long before it can touch your life. The thickness of this mental ozone layer is determined by the depth and consistency of your faith. And this is why Murphy emphasized daily practice, daily reinforcement of the conviction of safety. If the layer is thick, if your faith is strong, consistent, and unwavering, then the radiation of negativity cannot reach the surface of your life, cannot manifest in your physical experience, cannot touch your body or your affairs. The shield holds because the shield is made of substance that is denser, higher in frequency, more powerful than the substance of the threat, and therefore the threat is absorbed, neutralized, transformed before it can become real for you. This is not magic. This is the natural function of consciousness operating under its own laws, laws as dependable as the laws of chemistry and physics. Conversely, if the layer is thin, if your faith is weak, inconsistent, filled with doubt, then gaps form in the protection, and the radiation of negativity can slip through those gaps and manifest in your experience. This is why people who believe in protection sometimes but not always still experience danger, because their conviction is not thick enough, not consistent enough to provide complete coverage. Murphy was teaching you to thicken the layer through sustained practice, through daily affirmation, through constant reinforcement of the truth of your immunity, until the layer becomes so thick that no negativity can penetrate it under any circumstances. The goal is not occasional protection when you remember to invoke it. The goal is permanent immunity that functions automatically because your consciousness has been saturated with the conviction of safety. The analogy also reveals why worry and fear are so destructive to your protection, because worry and fear are the equivalent of punching holes in your ozone layer. Every time you entertain a fearful thought, every time you imagine a disaster, every time you dwell on worst-case scenarios, you are thinning the protective substance around your consciousness, creating weak spots where negativity can slip through. The person who worries constantly is living with a mental ozone layer full of holes, and they are therefore vulnerable to every form of negativity that exists in the collective consciousness. This is not punishment. This is simply the natural consequence of maintaining a low-frequency consciousness, just as living at high altitude with thin atmospheric protection would naturally result in radiation damage. The beauty of this understanding is that it makes protection a matter of simple maintenance rather than constant vigilance. You do not wake up every morning worrying about whether the ozone layer is still functioning. You simply trust that it is there, and you go about your day in complete confidence. Murphy was teaching you to develop the same relationship with your mental shield, to build it through initial practice, to reinforce it through daily affirmation, and then to trust it completely, to walk through the world with the same confidence you have in the atmosphere above you. The shield is there, the shield is functioning, and you do not need to check it constantly because it is made of the substance of law, and law does not fail. The scientific precision of this analogy also addresses the objection that spiritual protection is somehow less real than physical protection because the ozone layer is invisible, intangible, and yet it is the most essential protection we have, more important than any wall or weapon or defensive technology. In the same way, your mental shield is invisible, intangible, And yet it is the most essential protection you possess, more powerful than any lock, any security system, any physical defense, because it operates at the level of causation rather than effect. Physical defenses can be broken, circumvented, or overwhelmed, but a mental shield operating at the level of vibrational law cannot be broken because it exists in a dimension where the threat does not have access. Murphy's use of this analogy also emphasizes the impersonal nature of the law, the fact that protection is not about your worthiness or your moral status, but about the mechanical operation of frequency. The ozone layer does not protect good people and fail to protect bad people. It protects the entire planet impartially because it is simply doing what its nature dictates at that frequency. Your mental shield operates the same way. It protects you not because you deserve it, but because you are vibrating at the frequency where protection is the natural state. And at that frequency, danger cannot exist regardless of your past, your mistakes, or your moral standing. This is the liberation that Murphy offered: protection as law rather than protection as favor, immunity as science rather than immunity as grace. The analogy further illuminates why passive reception of fear-based information is so dangerous, because consuming fearful media is the equivalent of deliberately damaging your ozone layer. When you watch news broadcasts designed to terrify you, when you scroll through social media posts highlighting every disaster and tragedy, when you listen to conversations centered on danger and vulnerability, you are actively thinning your protective layer, weakening your shield, lowering your frequency to match the frequency of the content you are consuming. This is why Murphy insisted on mental diet, on guarding the gates of your consciousness, on refusing to allow fear-based information to enter your mind, because every piece of fear-based information is a toxin that degrades your protection. The practical application of the ozone layer analogy is that it gives you a clear metric for evaluating the strength of your shield. If you feel peace, if you move through the world in relaxed confidence, if the thought of danger does not disturb you, then your layer is thick and your protection is strong. If you feel anxiety, if you are constantly checking for threats, if every news report fills you with dread, then your layer is thin and your protection is compromised. Murphy taught that the feeling is the feedback mechanism, the gauge that tells you the status of your shield, and therefore the work of protection is the work of cultivating and maintaining the feeling of absolute safety, regardless of external circumstances. The final insight from this analogy is the understanding that the shield does not require you to know the specific nature of the threat in order to protect you from it, just as the ozone layer neutralizes all forms of harmful radiation without distinguishing between different types. You do not need to visualize protection from car accidents separately from protection from disease, separately from protection from violence, because the single high-frequency conviction of divine immunity neutralizes all lower-frequency possibilities simultaneously. This is the efficiency of working at the level of law rather than the level of circumstances. One cause that addresses all effects, one shield that repels all dangers, one conviction that creates comprehensive immunity. Therefore, the ozone layer analogy is not merely a teaching tool, but a precise description of the actual mechanism by which vibrational immunity functions. And when you truly grasp this comparison, when you understand that your conviction of safety operates in your consciousness exactly as the ozone layer operates in the atmosphere, you will never again doubt the reality of the shield. You will build it with the same confidence that engineers rely on atmospheric protection. You will maintain it with the same consistency that nature maintains the chemical balance of the stratosphere, and you will trust it with the same certainty that you trust the air above you to protect you from the radiation of space. This is the unshakable logic that Murphy offered, and it transforms protection from a hope into a science. Before you can execute the Fortress Protocol and activate the invisible shield, you must first enter the required mental state, a state Murphy called the untouchable. And this state is not achieved through meditation or affirmation, but through a radical act of mental hygiene that most people are unwilling to perform. The untouchable is not someone who has built strong defenses. The untouchable is someone who has removed all the internal receptors that could register an attack, and you cannot become untouchable while simultaneously feeding your consciousness a steady diet of fear-based information. The first and most essential preparation is therefore to stop consuming fear-based media. And this is not a gentle suggestion, but an absolute requirement, because you cannot build a wall of light while inviting the enemy for dinner. You cannot maintain a high-frequency shield while voluntarily lowering your frequency through the content you consume. The mechanism by which media consumption affects your shield is precise and mechanical. Every image of violence you watch, every report of disaster you read, every social media post highlighting tragedy and chaos acts as a vibrational anchor that pulls your consciousness down to the frequency where these events exist. When you watch news coverage of an accident, you are not merely receiving information. You are placing your consciousness in vibrational resonance with accidents. You are tuning your mental radio to the station where accidents broadcast, and in that moment, you are making yourself vulnerable to experiencing an accident in your own life. This is not superstition. This is the law of mental absorption, the principle that whatever you give sustained attention to becomes part of your vibrational signature, becomes part of the frequency you broadcast into the field of consciousness. Murphy understood what modern neuroscience has only recently confirmed. The brain does not distinguish between events you experience directly and events you experience through media, and when you watch footage of violence or disaster, your nervous system responds as if you are in danger, flooding your body with stress hormones, activating your fight or flight response, and most importantly, lowering your vibrational frequency to match the frequency of the threat you are witnessing. This physiological response is not neutral. It is the destruction of your shield in real time, because the shield can only exist at a high frequency, and the stress response is by definition a low-frequency state. Every time you consume fear-based content, you are temporarily destroying your protection, and if you do this habitually, you are living in a permanent state of vulnerability despite any affirmations or visualizations you might practice. The preparation of becoming untouchable therefore requires a ruthless audit of your information diet, a willingness to cut off all sources of fear-based content, even if they are disguised as staying informed or being realistic. Murphy would say that the person who watches hours of news coverage about crime and then wonders why they feel unsafe is like a person who swims in sewage and then wonders why they smell bad. The contamination is self-inflicted, and no amount of perfume applied afterward will remove the stench. You must choose. Do you want to be informed about every disaster on the planet, or do you want to be protected? You cannot have both, because information about disaster carries the frequency of disaster, and that frequency will degrade your shield regardless of your intentions in consuming it. This does not mean living in ignorance or refusing to acknowledge that challenges exist in the world. It means making a conscious choice about which reality you will align yourself with through your attention. There are two worlds operating simultaneously. The world of fear, chaos, and danger that is constantly highlighted by media, and the world of order, divine protection, and harmony that is the truth of existence under spiritual law. Both worlds are real in the sense that both exist as possibilities in the field of consciousness, but you can only inhabit one at a time through the focus of your attention, and whichever world you give your attention to becomes your experienced reality. Murphy taught that the prepared mind, the mind ready to activate the shield, is the mind that has chosen which world it will dwell in and has ruthlessly eliminated all content that would pull it into the other world. The practical discipline of this preparation is to implement what might be called a fear fast, a period of at least 30 days during which you consume no news, no crime shows, no disaster films, no true crime podcasts, no social media doom scrolling, and no conversations centered on danger and tragedy. This is not avoidance. This is strategic frequency management. Recognition that your consciousness is too valuable to be contaminated by the fear-mongering of a media system that profits from your anxiety. During this fast, you will notice something remarkable. Your baseline emotional state will shift upward, your sleep will improve, your immune system will strengthen, and most significantly, your sense of being protected will emerge naturally without effort because you have stopped poisoning yourself with fear-frequency content. The resistance you feel to implementing this fast is itself diagnostic, revealing how addicted your consciousness has become to fear-based stimulation, how dependent you have become on the adrenaline rush of consuming disaster, and this addiction must be broken before the shield can be built. Murphy taught that fear is the most addictive drug on the planet because it creates a powerful neurochemical response, and the media has engineered its content to trigger this response as frequently and intensely as possible. When you feel the compulsion to check the news, to scroll through disaster reports, to watch one more true crime documentary, you are not seeking information. You are seeking the neurochemical hit that fear provides, and this addiction is the primary obstacle to your protection. The state of being untouchable also requires a shift in how you relate to other people's fear, because you cannot maintain your high frequency while empathizing with, validating, or joining in the fear-based conversations that dominate social interaction. This does not mean being cold or unsympathetic. It means recognizing that when someone tells you a story of disaster or shares their anxiety about potential dangers, they are unconsciously attempting to pull you into their frequency, to recruit you into their reality, and you must gently but firmly refuse to join them there. Murphy taught that true compassion is not joining someone in their fear, but holding the frequency of peace so strongly that they can rise to meet you there, and this requires you to stop the social habit of bonding through shared anxiety. The mental discipline required for this preparation is to catch yourself every time you begin to mentally rehearse potential disasters, every time you start to imagine worst-case scenarios, every time you plan your response to dangers that have not happened and may never happen. These mental rehearsals are not preparation, they are invocations, and every time you imagine a disaster, you are broadcasting the frequency that attracts disaster. You are sending out a signal into the field of consciousness that says, "I am ready to experience this," and the universe responds by moving you into the timeline where that experience exists. Murphy insisted that imagination is not a neutral faculty. It is the creative power of consciousness, and whatever you imagine with emotion and repetition becomes a blueprint for manifestation. The prepared mind is therefore a disciplined mind, a mind that has taken conscious control over what it will and will not entertain, a mind that guards its gates with absolute vigilance because it understands that every thought admitted is a seed planted in the garden of consciousness. This level of mental discipline is not natural. It must be cultivated through practice, through the consistent choice to redirect attention away from fear and towards safety, and in the beginning, this will require constant effort because you have spent years training your mind to scan for threats, to anticipate danger, to rehearse disasters. Murphy taught that this old habit must be starved through disuse, while the new habit of assuming safety is fed through repetition. And the transition period is the most challenging phase of the work because you are fighting against decades of conditioning. The state of being untouchable is also characterized by a specific physical posture, a way of carrying your body that reflects the conviction of your mind. When you walk through the world believing you are vulnerable, your body shows it. Your shoulders are hunched, your eyes scan nervously, your breathing is shallow, your movement is hesitant, and this physical posture broadcasts vulnerability to everyone around you, making you a target not through metaphysics but through simple behavioral dynamics. Murphy taught that consciousness and body are not separate, but are a unified system, and you cannot build a mental shield while your body is signaling fear. Therefore, part of the preparation is to consciously adopt the posture of one who is protected. Shoulders back, head up, breathing deep and slow, movement confident and unhurried, and this physical posture helps to anchor the mental state because the body and mind inform each other in a continuous feedback loop. The prepared state is also marked by a shift in your relationship to uncertainty, moving from the anxiety of not knowing what will happen to the peace of trusting that whatever happens will be for your highest good. Most people experience uncertainty as a threat because they believe that danger could strike at any moment from any direction, and this belief creates a state of permanent tension, permanent alertness, permanent exhaustion. Murphy taught that true preparation is not about predicting or preventing every possible danger. True preparation is about building such a strong shield that it does not matter what happens, you know you will be safe. This shift from control to trust is difficult for the rational mind because the rational mind wants to solve the problem of danger by anticipating every possibility. But this approach is doomed to failure because possibilities are infinite, and you cannot prepare for infinity. The final aspect of preparation is to make a formal declaration to yourself that you are beginning a new life, a life lived under the law of divine protection, and that the old life of fear and vulnerability is over. Murphy taught that consciousness responds to ceremony, to ritual, to formal declarations, because these create a clear line of demarcation between the old pattern and the new pattern. And this line is psychologically important because it prevents you from sliding back into old habits through the excuse that you were just trying the new approach. The declaration might be something like, "As of this moment, I am under divine protection. The old life of fear is ended. I am now untouchable, and I claim this as my permanent state." This declaration is not a wish. It is a command to your subconscious mind, and when made with full conviction, it creates an immediate shift in your vibrational frequency. The preparation phase is not optional, and it is not something you do once and then forget. It is an ongoing discipline that must be maintained for as long as you wish to maintain the shield. Murphy was clear that the shield will only remain active as long as you remain in the state of consciousness that generated it. And if you allow yourself to slip back into fear-based thinking, fear-based media consumption, fear-based conversation, the shield will thin and eventually dissolve. The good news is that with practice, the discipline becomes easier, becomes more natural, until eventually it requires no effort at all, because you have reprogrammed your consciousness to default to the frequency of protection rather than the frequency of fear. This is the goal of preparation, not to create a temporary shift, but to establish a new baseline, a new normal, a new identity as one who is permanently untouchable. Therefore, the mental preparation for activating the invisible shield is not about adding new practices to your existing life. It is about fundamentally restructuring your relationship with information, with fear, with uncertainty, and with your own identity. It is about making the hard choice to cut off all sources of frequency contamination, even when this choice seems extreme or unnecessary, because you understand that protection is not a casual interest, but a scientific practice that requires precise conditions to function. When you have completed this preparation, when you have established yourself in the state of being untouchable, then and only then are you ready to execute the Fortress Protocol and activate the shield that will make you invulnerable to all negativity. The Fortress Protocol is the systematic procedure for activating and maintaining the invisible shield, and it consists of 3 distinct steps that must be executed in sequence with absolute precision, because each step builds upon the previous one, and any deviation from the protocol will compromise the effectiveness of the shield. Murphy designed this protocol based on the fundamental laws of visualization, decree, and embodiment, understanding that protection is not achieved through a single act, but through a coordinated engagement of imagination, speech, and physical presence. The protocol is called Fortress because it creates a structure around your consciousness that is as solid and impenetrable as a medieval castle. And like a fortress, it must be built with careful attention to every detail, every stone placed deliberately, every gate secured properly, because a single weak point can compromise the entire structure. Step 1 of the protocol is called the enclosure, and it is the visual component of shield activation, the act of using your imagination to construct the actual architecture of your protection. Before you leave your house each morning, or any time you feel the need to strengthen your shield, you must pause for 60 seconds and engage in a specific visualization. Close your eyes and see in your mind's eye a ring of brilliant white light or golden fire surrounding your entire body at a distance of approximately 3 feet in all directions, above your head, below your feet, and in a complete circle around your torso. This is not a vague glow. This is a clearly defined boundary, a wall of energy that is absolutely solid, absolutely impenetrable, and you must see it in your imagination with the same clarity that you see physical objects with your eyes. The specific image Murphy most often used was a wall of light, and the characteristics of this wall are important. It is radiant, blazing with intensity, and anything that approaches it from the outside is dissolved on contact, incinerated by the sheer frequency of the light before it can pass through. Some students find it easier to visualize a ring of fire, actual flames that surround them in a protective circle. And this image is equally effective as long as the fire is seen as impenetrable, as a boundary that nothing negative can cross. The key is not the specific image, but the clarity and conviction with which you hold the image, because the image is the mold into which the substance of consciousness will pour, and if the mold is vague or uncertain, the resulting shield will be weak and porous. As you hold this visualization, you must add the specific prayer that Murphy taught, speaking it either aloud or in your mind with absolute conviction. The light of God surrounds me, the love of God enfolds me, the power of God protects me, the presence of God watches over me. Wherever I am, God is and all is well. This prayer is not a request, it is a statement of existing fact, a recognition of the divine protection that is already present and that you are now consciously activating through your attention. Each phrase of this prayer corresponds to a specific aspect of the shield. The light is the radiance that dissolves negativity. The love is the substance that forms the barrier. The power is the force that maintains it. And the presence is the intelligence that directs it. When you speak these words with conviction while holding the visualization, you are aligning your consciousness with these qualities, and the alignment creates the shield. The visualization must be held for a minimum of 60 seconds, not because the shield takes time to build, but because your consciousness needs time to saturate with the conviction of the image, time to shift from intellectual understanding to visceral knowing, time to feel the protection as a tangible reality rather than an abstract concept. During this 60 seconds, you may find that doubt arises, that your rational mind objects that this is silly or ineffective, and this is the moment of truth. You must override the doubt with will, must force your consciousness to accept the visualization as real, must insist that the shield is in place regardless of what your rational mind believes. Murphy taught that the rational mind is not the creative faculty. Imagination infused with conviction is the creative faculty, and therefore what you imagine with conviction becomes real, regardless of what logic says. The critical error most people make in step 1 is that they visualize the shield but they do not feel it. And visualization without feeling is like a blueprint without construction. It shows what could be built, but does not actually build anything. As you hold the image of the ring of fire or wall of light, you must generate the feeling of absolute safety, the feeling of being completely protected, the feeling of nothing being able to touch you. And this feeling is what gives the visualization its power. Murphy insisted that feeling is the secret of all mental creation, that consciousness responds not to images alone, but to images charged with emotion, and therefore the work is to feel yourself safe while seeing yourself surrounded, to merge the visual and the emotional into a single state of protected consciousness. Step 2 of the protocol is called the decree, and it is the spoken component of shield activation, the act of using the creative power of the word to establish the law of your protection. After completing the visualization, and while still holding the image of the shield in your awareness, you must state the law with absolute authority. And the specific wording Murphy taught is, I am immune to all negativity. Nothing negative can touch me. I am surrounded by the divine presence, and I am completely safe. These words are not affirmations in the sense of positive thinking. These words are decrees in the sense of legislative acts, commands issued to the subconscious mind and to the universal law that governs manifestation. The difference is in the tone and conviction with which they are spoken. You are not hoping they are true. You are not trying to convince yourself they are true. You are declaring them as biological facts, as laws that govern your experience with the same certainty that gravity governs falling objects. The power of the decree lies in understanding that the spoken word is a carrier wave for consciousness, a vehicle through which your conviction is transmitted into the universal substance and impressed upon it as a pattern for manifestation. When you speak with conviction, you are not merely making sounds, you are causing vibrations in the field of consciousness, creating patterns in the substance, and these patterns solidify into the circumstances of your life. This is why Murphy emphasized that you must speak the decree out loud when possible, because the physical act of speaking engages more of your consciousness than silent repetition, creates a more powerful vibration, and therefore produces a stronger shield. If you are in a public place where speaking aloud would be inappropriate, you can speak it mentally. But the internal voice must have the same authority, the same commanding tone, the same absolute certainty as if you were addressing a battalion of soldiers. The specific wording of the decree is important because each phrase is targeting a different aspect of the protective mechanism. "I am immune to all negativity" is establishing the fundamental law, claiming the state of vibrational immunity that we discussed in Part 2. "Nothing negative can touch me" is reinforcing this law with a specific prohibition, creating a boundary that negativity cannot cross. "I am surrounded by the divine presence" is identifying the source and substance of the shield, acknowledging that your protection comes not from your personal power, but from your alignment with infinite power. "I am completely safe" is the conclusion, the summary statement that captures the entire essence of the shield in a simple, powerful declaration. These 4 phrases work together as a complete system, and while you can modify the wording to match your own spiritual vocabulary, the essential elements must be present for the decree to function at full power. The tone in which you speak the decree must be one of absolute authority, and this is where most people fail, because they have been conditioned to make requests rather than commands, to hope rather than to declare. Murphy taught that you are not asking God to protect you. You are recognizing that protection is the natural state when you align with God, and therefore your decree is not a petition, but a statement of law. The tone should be the tone you would use if you were a judge pronouncing a verdict, if you were a monarch issuing a command, if you were a scientist stating an established fact, calm, certain, unshakable, with no trace of doubt or questioning. If you catch yourself speaking the decree with a questioning inflection, with a tone that suggests uncertainty, you must stop and speak it again with authority, because the universe responds to the conviction behind the words, not to the words themselves. Step 3 of the protocol is called the walk, and it is the embodiment component of shield activation, the act of moving through the world with the physical posture and mental attitude that reflects your conviction of protection. After you have completed the visualization and spoken the decree, you do not leave your house and immediately forget what you have done. You walk out the door with the full consciousness that you are now surrounded by an impenetrable shield, and this consciousness must be reflected in how you carry your body and direct your attention. Murphy taught that the shield is maintained not through constant visualization, but through sustained conviction, and this conviction is expressed through your physical presence in the world. The specific instruction for the walk is to move with the confidence of a king surrounded by Secret Service agents, to walk through crowds and dangerous situations with the absolute knowing that nothing can touch you, that you are being protected at every moment by forces far greater than any threat you might encounter. This does not mean walking with arrogance or challenging danger deliberately. It means walking with calm assurance, with relaxed vigilance, with the posture of one who has no reason to fear, because fear is incompatible with their state of consciousness. Your shoulders are back, your head is up, your breathing is deep and even, your pace is unhurried, and most importantly, you do not look over your shoulder. You do not scan nervously for threats. You do not clutch your belongings in fear, because all of these behaviors are signals to your subconscious mind that you do not trust the shield, and this lack of trust will weaken it. The walk also involves a specific mental attitude, which Murphy described as relaxed expectancy. You are expecting to be safe, you are expecting danger to miss you, you are expecting the shield to function exactly as designed. And this expectation is held not with tension but with relaxation, with the ease of one who trusts a law rather than hoping for a favor. Most people walk through the world in a state of tense vigilance, constantly monitoring for threats, and this tension is itself a low-frequency state that attracts danger. The protected person walks through the world in a state of relaxed confidence, aware of their surroundings but not anxious about them, alert but not afraid. And this state of consciousness is what maintains the shield, because it is the state of consciousness that generated the shield in the first place. The power of the walk is that it creates a feedback loop between your consciousness and your physical experience, where the more you walk in confidence, the more evidence you receive that you are safe, and the more evidence you receive, the stronger your conviction becomes, and the stronger your conviction becomes, the thicker your shield grows. Murphy taught that faith is built through demonstration, through seeing the law work, and the walk is designed to give you daily demonstrations of your immunity by putting you in situations where danger could theoretically manifest but consistently does not. Over time, you will notice that people unconsciously move out of your way in crowds, that accidents seem to happen just before or just after you pass a location, but never while you are there, that aggressive individuals do not target you, and these repeated experiences will solidify your conviction until it becomes unshakable. The final component of the walk is a technique Murphy called the silent blessing, where as you move through the world, you silently bless everyone you encounter with the same protection you have claimed for yourself. This is not altruism. This is strategic frequency management, because when you bless others with protection, you reinforce your own conviction of protection, and you also ensure that you are not lowering your frequency by judging or fearing other people. The blessing can be as simple as the silent thought, "You are safe in God," or divine protection surrounds you. And this thought keeps your consciousness anchored in the high frequency of the shield, rather than allowing it to drop into the low frequency of fear or judgment. Therefore, the Fortress Protocol is not a single action, but a three-part system that engages your imagination, your speech, and your physical presence in the coordinated work of building and maintaining the invisible shield. And when all three steps are executed with precision and conviction, the result is a state of consciousness that is literally impervious to harm, a vibrational fortress that no negativity can penetrate, and a lived experience of moving through the world as one who is untouchable. The Fortress Protocol is powerful, but its power can be completely negated by a single subtle error, an internal sabotage so insidious that most people never recognize they are committing it. And this is what I promised to reveal in the introduction: the Trojan horse, the specific emotion that opens the gate from the inside and lets the enemy in even when you believe you have constructed the perfect defense. Murphy identified two primary mistakes that destroy the shield, and both of them are expressions of the same fundamental error: the shift from conviction to monitoring, from faith to testing, from declaring the law to checking whether the law is working. These mistakes are fatal because they represent a return to the consciousness of vulnerability, a subtle shift back into the frequency of fear, even while you are attempting to maintain the frequency of protection. The first mistake, and the one I specifically warned you about at the beginning of this video, is the fear of the shield failing. And this manifests as the compulsive need to check whether you are safe, to test whether the protection is holding, to scan for evidence that the shield is working. This mistake is so common that Murphy devoted entire lectures to addressing it, because students would come to him confused about why the protection techniques seemed to work sometimes, but not others. And upon investigation, he would discover that they were constantly checking, constantly monitoring, constantly asking themselves, "Am I safe? Is it working? Is the shield still up?" And this very act of checking was the thing that was destroying the shield they were trying to maintain. The mechanism by which checking destroys the shield is precise and unforgiving. When you check to see if you are safe, you are operating from the assumption that you might not be safe, and this assumption broadcasts the frequency of vulnerability, which is the exact opposite of the frequency of immunity. The moment you doubt the protection, you lower your vibrational frequency from the high state where the shield exists to the low state where danger exists, and in that moment, you become visible to the danger again. It is like turning on a light in a dark room where an enemy is hiding. The enemy could not see you in the dark, but the moment you turn on the light to check if the enemy is there, you reveal your position. The doubt itself is the breach in the wall, the hole in the ozone layer, the frequency drop that allows negativity to slip through. Murphy used a powerful analogy to illustrate this principle. Imagine you have a friend who is an expert locksmith, and this friend installs a state-of-the-art security system in your home. And after the installation is complete, your friend tells you with absolute authority, your home is now completely secure. Nothing can get in. If you trust your friend completely, you go to bed that night in peace, you sleep soundly, and you wake up safe. But if you do not trust your friend, If you spend the night getting up every hour to check the locks, to test the windows, to make sure the alarm is still armed, then you get no sleep, you live in anxiety. And ironically, your constant checking is what creates vulnerability, because exhaustion and anxiety lower your awareness and make you more susceptible to mistakes. The checking itself is the problem, not the solution. The spiritual application of this analogy is exact. When you execute the fortress protocol and activate the shield, you must trust it completely, and then release all monitoring, all checking, all testing. You must walk through the world with the absolute assumption that the shield is functioning, that you are protected, that nothing can touch you, and you must maintain this assumption even when your rational mind wants to check, even when fear whispers, "But what if it's not working?" Murphy taught that the moment you entertain that question, the moment you allow doubt to enter your consciousness, the shield weakens instantly, because the shield is made of conviction, and doubt is the dissolution of conviction. The shield does not fail, you dismantle it yourself through doubt. The practical discipline for avoiding this mistake is to make a firm decision that once you have activated the shield through the protocol, you will not check it, will not test it, will not question it for the rest of that day. You will assume it is working. You will act as if it is working. You will move through the world as if you are completely protected, and you will refuse to entertain any thought that suggests otherwise. If the thought arises, "Am I really safe?" you immediately override it with the declaration, "I am absolutely safe, the shield is functioning perfectly, I trust the law." This override must be immediate and forceful, because doubt grows when it is entertained, and if you allow yourself to dwell on doubt for even 30 seconds, it can undo hours of conviction building. Murphy also taught that checking is often disguised as wisdom or prudence, where people justify their doubt by claiming they are just being realistic or careful. They say things like, "I believe in the shield, but I still lock my doors because that's just common sense." And on the surface, this seems reasonable, but Murphy would point out that the energy behind the action is what matters. If you lock your door from a place of calm routine, without fear, without the thought, "What if someone breaks in?" then the action is neutral and does not affect your shield. But if you lock your door from a place of fear, if you are checking the locks compulsively, if you are imagining intruders as you turn the key, then you are destroying your shield through that very action, because the action is carrying the frequency of fear and vulnerability. The solution is not to stop taking practical precautions, but to take them from a different consciousness, to perform physical actions from a place of calm neutrality rather than from fear, and to recognize that your true safety comes from the shield, not from the lock. The lock is a courtesy to your conscious mind, a way to satisfy its need for action, but the actual protection is happening at the level of consciousness through the shield, and if the shield is functioning, then it does not matter whether the door is locked, because someone who would break in will simply not be drawn to your home, will not think of your home, will walk past your home without noticing it, because they are vibrating at a frequency that cannot perceive your reality. This is the level of protection Murphy was teaching, not protection through superior physical defenses, but protection through vibrational invisibility. The second fatal mistake is judging others, and this mistake is particularly insidious because it is often done with a sense of righteousness, a belief that you are simply recognizing evil or protecting yourself by being aware of dangerous people. Murphy taught that when you judge or hate what you perceive as bad people, you lower your vibration to their level in order to engage with them mentally, and in that moment, you step out of the fortress to fight in the mud. The mechanism is that judgment and hatred vibrate at a low frequency, the same frequency as violence and danger, and when you judge someone as evil or dangerous, you tune your consciousness to their frequency, and in doing so, you become vulnerable to experiencing the very things you are judging them for. This principle is difficult for people to accept because the rational mind insists that recognizing danger is necessary for avoiding it, and on the physical level this is partially true, but Murphy was operating at a higher level than physical defense. He taught that when you are in the high-frequency state of the shield, dangerous people simply do not enter your experience. You do not encounter them, you do not cross paths with them, you exist in a different reality track where they are not present. But the moment you judge them, The moment you focus on their evil, the moment you hate them, you drop your frequency to match theirs, and suddenly they can perceive you, they can interact with you, they can manifest in your experience because you have made yourself visible to them through judgment. The spiritual instruction is therefore to stay in the high tower, to maintain your high-frequency consciousness regardless of what you observe in the world, and to refuse to lower your vibration by engaging in judgment. This does not mean being naive or pretending that danger does not exist. It means recognizing that danger exists at a certain frequency, and you do not have to match that frequency in order to be safe from it. In fact, the only way to be truly safe from it is to refuse to match that frequency, to stay anchored in the consciousness of divine protection and divine order, and to let the danger exist in its own frequency band while you exist in yours. Murphy's specific instruction was to practice forgiveness, not as a moral virtue but as a strategic frequency management tool. When you encounter someone who appears dangerous or evil, instead of judging them, you silently say, "I forgive you and release you to your highest good. You are under God's law, not my judgment." This statement serves multiple functions. It prevents you from lowering your vibration through judgment. It reinforces your own conviction that divine law governs all people, and it keeps you in the fortress of high-frequency consciousness where you remain untouchable. The forgiveness is not condoning their actions. It is refusing to engage with them at their frequency, and this refusal is what keeps you safe. The practical challenge of avoiding this mistake is that you must retrain your emotional responses, because most people have been conditioned to respond to danger with fear and to evil with hatred. And these responses feel natural, feel justified, feel righteous. Murphy taught that these responses may feel natural, but they are not safe, because they lower your frequency and make you vulnerable. The trained consciousness responds to danger not with fear but with calm reaffirmation of protection, and responds to evil not with hatred but with detached compassion, understanding that those who operate at low frequencies are suffering from ignorance of their true nature, and your job is not to judge them, but to stay in your own high frequency, where their low frequency cannot reach you. The master's tips that Murphy offered for refining the shield all revolve around the principle of sustained consciousness, of maintaining the conviction of protection not just during the morning protocol, but throughout the entire day. His most powerful command, the one he instructed students to repeat whenever they felt fear arising or whenever they encountered something that threatened their peace, was, "The presence of God is a wall of fire round about me, and the glory of God is in the midst of me. I am immune to all evil, and I am surrounded by the circle of God's love. Nothing can touch me." This command is comprehensive, addressing both the external shield, the wall of fire, and the internal state, the glory within. And when spoken with conviction, it instantly restores the shield to full strength if it has been weakened by doubt or judgment. Murphy also taught a technique called the immediate override, which is the practice of catching negative thoughts the instant they arise and immediately replacing them with the truth of your protection. The key word is immediate. You cannot allow a negative thought to dwell in your consciousness for even a few seconds, because every second it dwells, it is creating, it is manifesting, it is weakening your shield. The override must be automatic, practiced until it becomes a reflex, so that the moment the thought "I might get sick" arises, it is instantly replaced with "I am surrounded by divine health." The moment the thought "that person looks dangerous" arises, it is instantly replaced with "I dwell in the secret place of the Most High." The moment the thought "what if the shield isn't working" arises, it is instantly replaced with "the shield is perfect and permanent." The refinement of the shield is therefore not about adding new techniques, but about eliminating the subtle self-sabotage that prevents the original technique from functioning at full power. And when you have mastered the art of sustained conviction, when you have eliminated doubt and judgment from your consciousness, when you have trained yourself to maintain the high frequency of protection regardless of external circumstances, then the shield becomes permanent, becomes automatic, becomes your default state, and you truly become untouchable, moving through the world in complete safety, not through effort, but through consciousness. The concept of the invisible shield and vibrational immunity is not merely a spiritual philosophy or a comforting belief. It is a precise description of how human consciousness interfaces with physical reality, and this interface can be validated through multiple lines of evidence, both scientific and experiential. Murphy understood that for the modern mind, faith without understanding is weak faith, and therefore he consistently sought to connect his spiritual teachings to observable phenomena in biology, psychology, and physics. The most direct biological validation of the shield concept comes from the study of the human immune system, and when you understand how this system functions, you will see that Murphy was teaching psychoneuroimmunology, the science of how consciousness affects immune function, decades before medical science recognized this field. Your physical immune system is a microscopic army, billions of specialized cells that patrol your body continuously, identifying and destroying invaders such as bacteria, viruses, and cancer cells before they can cause harm. This system operates automatically, without your conscious direction, and when it is functioning optimally, it makes you essentially invulnerable to most diseases because threats are neutralized the moment they are detected. The immune system does not wait for an infection to establish itself and then fight it. It prevents infection from ever taking hold by destroying pathogens on contact. This is the biological equivalent of the invisible shield, an automatic protective mechanism that operates through the maintenance of a high-frequency state, in this case, the high-frequency state of cellular health and chemical balance. The crucial discovery that connects the immune system to Murphy's teaching is that this protective mechanism is not constant. It can be turned on or off by mental states, specifically by the presence or absence of chronic stress. When you experience fear, anxiety, or any sustained negative emotion, your body releases stress hormones such as cortisol and adrenaline, and these hormones suppress immune function because the body interprets stress as a signal that you are in immediate physical danger. And in immediate danger, the immune system is a luxury that can be temporarily shut down to redirect energy to muscles for fighting or fleeing. This made sense in the ancestral environment, where stress meant a physical threat like a predator. But in modern life, where stress is chronic and mental rather than acute and physical, the result is that many people are living with permanently suppressed immune systems, making them vulnerable to every pathogen they encounter. Murphy's genius was recognizing that this biological mechanism operates at the level of consciousness, meaning that the determining factor is not whether you are actually in danger, but whether you believe you are in danger, whether you are holding the mental state of fear and vulnerability. If you wake up every morning in a state of anxiety, if you move through the world expecting danger, if you imagine worst-case scenarios continuously, then your body is receiving the signal that you are under threat and your immune system is being suppressed continuously. And this suppression is not a metaphor. It is measurable through blood tests that show reduced white blood cell counts, reduced natural killer cell activity, and reduced antibody production. You are literally turning off your body's protective mechanism through fear-based consciousness. And Murphy taught that the invisible shield works the same way, but at a higher level. Just as chronic stress suppresses the immune system and makes you vulnerable to disease, chronic fear consciousness suppresses your spiritual immunity and makes you vulnerable to accidents, violence, and disaster. The mechanism is identical. Fear sends a signal to the universal law that you are vulnerable, that you expect danger, that you are tuned to the frequency where negative events occur, and the law responds by allowing those events into your experience because you have given consent through your consciousness. Conversely, just as states of peace, joy, and relaxation enhance immune function, this has been proven through studies showing that meditation increases natural killer cell activity and that laughter increases immunoglobulin levels. States of faith, trust, and conviction of safety enhance spiritual immunity by maintaining the high-frequency consciousness where danger cannot exist. The practical implication of this biological validation is profound. Murphy was not teaching something separate from physical reality. He was teaching the mental control of the same protective mechanisms that science recognizes in the body. When you activate the invisible shield through the Fortress Protocol, when you maintain the conviction of absolute safety, you are not creating something magical or supernatural. You are activating your spiritual immune system in the same way that reducing stress activates your physical immune system. The shield is as real as your white blood cells, as functional as your antibodies, and as powerful as your natural killer cells, except that it operates at the level of causation rather than effect, preventing negative circumstances from manifesting rather than fighting them after they appear. The research in psychoneuroimmunology has also revealed another crucial principle that validates Murphy's teaching: the placebo effect, which demonstrates that belief alone can trigger profound physiological changes. In placebo studies, patients who believe they are receiving treatment show measurable improvement even when the treatment is inert, and the mechanism is that belief activates the body's self-healing systems. The conscious expectation of healing sends signals to the nervous system, which releases healing biochemicals, which enhance immune function, which produces actual recovery. This is belief causing physical change through a lawful mechanism, and Murphy understood that the same principle operates at every level of manifestation. Belief in protection causes actual protection through the lawful mechanism of vibrational frequency. The validation extends further when we examine the emerging field of quantum biology, which has discovered that biological systems operate not just through classical chemistry, but through quantum effects such as superposition and entanglement. At the quantum level, particles exist in multiple states simultaneously until observation collapses them into a single state, which means that at the fundamental level of reality, consciousness is not passive, but participates in determining which possibilities become actual. Murphy was teaching this principle when he said that consciousness chooses which reality you experience, not in the New Age sense of creating your own reality, as if reality is an illusion, but in the quantum sense that multiple potential realities exist simultaneously, and your consciousness determines which one you experience through the frequency you maintain. When you hold the consciousness of absolute safety, you are not preventing danger from existing in the universal field. You are selecting the timeline where danger does not enter your personal experience, where you exist in the possibility space where accidents miss you, where violent people do not cross your path, where disease does not take hold in your body. This is not wishful thinking. This is consciousness operating according to its quantum nature. And the more scientists study quantum effects in biological systems, the more they discover that Murphy's teachings were not metaphorical, but literal descriptions of how consciousness functions at the deepest level of reality. The biological and quantum validations are supported by the accumulated experiential evidence from thousands of people who have practiced Murphy's techniques and experienced results that cannot be explained by chance or coincidence. These are not anecdotes of people avoiding danger through clever action. These are reports of danger inexplicably missing them, of being in the wrong place at the right time, of bullets or disease or accidents affecting everyone around them but leaving them untouched. The skeptic dismisses these as luck, but luck is simply a word for an unexplained statistical anomaly, and when the anomaly occurs consistently for people practicing a specific consciousness technique, it stops being anomalous and starts being evidence of a law in operation. Murphy collected and studied these cases systematically, looking for patterns, and the pattern he found was consistent. Protection manifested for those who maintained absolute conviction without checking, without doubt, without judgment. Those who practiced the technique casually or with reservation experienced occasional protection but not consistent immunity. This pattern is itself validation because it shows that the technique produces reliable results when executed precisely, which is the definition of a law. Laws are not sometimes true and sometimes false. They are always true when the conditions are met, and the law of vibrational immunity is always true when the condition of sustained high-frequency consciousness is met. The validation also comes from the negative evidence, the observation that fear-based consciousness reliably produces danger. Insurance companies have long known that anxious drivers have more accidents even when controlling for other factors, and they charge higher premiums accordingly. This is not because anxious people are worse at operating a vehicle. It is because anxiety creates a mental state that attracts accidents through the mechanism Murphy described. The anxious driver is broadcasting the frequency of danger. expecting danger, rehearsing scenarios of danger, and the law responds by manifesting those scenarios. The insurance industry has accidentally validated Murphy's teaching through pure statistical analysis, proving that consciousness affects outcome independent of skill or circumstance. The medical establishment has also provided indirect validation through the study of the nocebo effect, the dark mirror of the placebo effect, where belief in danger causes actual harm. Patients who are told they are at high risk for a disease develop that disease at higher rates than those who are told they are at low risk, even when the actual risk is identical. Patients who are told a medication has severe side effects experience those side effects at much higher rates than patients who are not warned, even when the medication is the same. This is consciousness creating outcome through belief, and it proves that Murphy's teaching about the power of conviction is not speculation but demonstrable fact. If negative belief can create negative outcomes, which science has proven it can, then by the same mechanism, positive belief can create positive outcomes, and specifically, belief in immunity can create actual immunity. The final validation comes from the study of survivors, people who have lived through situations where most people died, and when these survivors are interviewed, a common pattern emerges. Many of them report that they had a strong intuition or conviction that they would survive, that something would protect them, that it was not their time. This conviction is often present before the dangerous situation occurs, and it remains unshaken during the situation, and these survivors describe moving through chaos with an inexplicable calm, a certainty that they would be all right despite all evidence to the contrary. This is the invisible shield in action, and the fact that it appears consistently in survivor testimonies across different types of disasters, wars, accidents, natural disasters, attacks, suggests that it is not random, but the operation of a principle that Murphy identified and taught how to activate deliberately. Therefore, the biological validation through immune system function, the quantum validation through consciousness effects at the subatomic level, the experiential validation through thousands of consistent reports, the statistical validation through insurance and medical data, and the survivor validation through testimony of those who have lived through extreme danger all converge to support Murphy's teaching that the invisible shield is not a metaphor, but a real protective mechanism operating through lawful principles. You are not being asked to believe in magic. You are being invited to apply a science that conventional institutions have not yet fully recognized, but that you can validate personally through practice and observation of results. To make the principle of the invisible shield concrete and undeniable, Murphy often shared a specific historical account that demonstrated the power of sustained conviction in the face of extreme danger. And this account concerns a soldier in World War II who walked through some of the deadliest combat of that war without receiving a single injury, despite being in situations where men fell dead and wounded all around him. This soldier's protection was not the result of superior tactical skill, better armor, or fortunate placement. It was the direct result of a specific mental practice that he maintained throughout his entire deployment, a practice that consisted of reading Psalm 91 every single day and holding in his consciousness the absolute conviction that the words of that psalm were literal truth describing his reality. Psalm 91 is known as the shield prayer in spiritual traditions because it contains explicit promises of divine protection. He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. 1,000 shall fall at thy side, and 10,000 at thy right hand. But it shall not come nigh thee. There shall no evil befall thee, neither shall any plague come nigh thy dwelling. For he shall give his angels charge over thee, to keep thee in all thy ways. The soldier did not read these words as poetry or as hopeful sentiment. He read them as scientific statements describing the operation of a law, and he internalized them so deeply that they became his consciousness, his default mental state, his permanent conviction. Every morning before going into combat, this soldier would find a quiet moment to read the entire psalm aloud, slowly, with full attention to each phrase, and as he read, he would visualize himself surrounded by an impenetrable protective barrier, exactly as the psalm described. He did not hope he would be protected. He knew he was protected, and this knowing was so complete that he moved through combat situations with a calm that his fellow soldiers found inexplicable. They reported that he seemed to walk through firefights as if he were taking a casual stroll, not because he was reckless or suicidal, but because he genuinely felt no fear, because his consciousness was anchored in the reality of divine protection rather than the appearance of danger. The results of this practice were documented by his commanding officers and fellow soldiers. On multiple occasions, bullets struck men standing directly next to him, but he was never hit. In one incident, a mortar shell landed in the foxhole where he was positioned, and 5 other men in that foxhole were killed instantly, but he was thrown clear by the blast and walked away with minor bruises. In another incident, his platoon was ambushed, and 15 of the 20 men were killed or wounded in the first minute of fighting, but he was not touched despite being in the center of the ambush zone. His survival was so consistent, so inexplicable by normal standards, that his fellow soldiers began to believe he was protected by something beyond physical luck, and some of them began reading Psalm 91 themselves, hoping to share in his immunity. The crucial point that Murphy emphasized when telling this story is that the soldiers' protection was not random or mysterious. It was the predictable result of applying a specific consciousness technique with absolute consistency and conviction. The soldier did not read Psalm 91 occasionally when he felt afraid. He read it every single day without exception, and he maintained the conviction of protection every single moment, even in the midst of chaos. He did not check to see if the protection was working. He assumed it was working and moved accordingly. He did not judge the enemy soldiers or hate them. He simply remained in his high-frequency state where their bullets could not find him. This is the complete application of everything Murphy taught about the invisible shield, and the result was immunity that defied all statistical probability. Murphy used this story to make several critical points about the shield's operation. First, the shield does not prevent danger from existing in your environment. It prevents danger from touching you personally. The soldier was in the middle of a war, surrounded by lethal threats, and yet he was untouchable because he had created what Murphy called a reality bubble, a localized field of high-frequency consciousness that existed within the larger field of low-frequency violence. Second, the shield does not require you to take foolish risks or test it deliberately. The soldier performed his duties, went where he was ordered to go, and did what soldiers do in war, but he did all of this from the consciousness of protection rather than the consciousness of vulnerability. Third, the shield becomes stronger with sustained practice, and the soldier's immunity was most complete toward the end of his deployment when his conviction had been reinforced by months of evidence that the protection was real. The anecdote also illustrates the principle of vibrational invisibility that we discussed earlier. The soldier was not dodging bullets through superior reflexes. The bullets were missing him because at his frequency, he was not a viable target. This is not magic. This is the same principle by which a radio tuned to 91.5 FM cannot pick up a signal broadcasting at 105.3 FM. The bullets were vibrating at the frequency of violence and death, and the soldier was vibrating at the frequency of divine protection and life, and there was no vibrational overlap, no point of contact, no bridge between the two frequencies. He existed in a parallel reality track where the war was happening around him but not to him. Murphy also pointed out that the soldier's practice was simple, requiring no special knowledge, no mystical training, no extraordinary effort, just the daily reading of a prayer with absolute conviction and the sustained maintenance of the consciousness that the prayer described. This simplicity is important because it demonstrates that the shield is available to anyone who will apply the technique with consistency, not just to spiritual adepts or those with special gifts. The soldier was an ordinary man who discovered an extraordinary principle and applied it systematically, and his results prove that the principle works when the conditions are met. The story concludes with the soldier returning home without a scratch, not because the war missed him geographically, but because he had created a consciousness where the war could not enter. He did not dig deeper foxholes than his comrades. He dug deeper into his mind, deeper into conviction, deeper into the truth that divine protection is a law that operates with mathematical certainty when invoked with full faith. This is the essence of Murphy's teaching. You do not need better external defenses. You need to activate your internal shield, and when that shield is fully active, you can walk through the valley of the shadow of death and fear no evil, because evil cannot touch one who dwells in the consciousness of the Most High. We arrive now at the synthesis, the bringing together of all that has been revealed about the invisible shield, and the essential conclusion that must be driven deep into your consciousness is this: safety is not a location, it is a vibration. You have spent your entire life believing that safety comes from being in the right place at the right time, from avoiding dangerous locations, from having the right security measures, from predicting threats and taking preventive action. But all of this is operating at the level of effect rather than cause, and therefore all of this is ultimately futile because you cannot predict every threat or be in the safe location at every moment. Murphy's teaching transcends this exhausting game of physical chess by revealing that safety is determined not by where you are, but by what you are vibrating, what frequency you are broadcasting, what consciousness you are maintaining. When you understand that safety is a vibration, you understand that you carry your protection with you wherever you go, that you cannot leave it behind, that you cannot lose it, that it is not dependent on external circumstances, but on internal conviction. The shift from location-based safety to vibration-based safety is the shift from victim consciousness to creator consciousness, from hoping the world will be safe to commanding your experience to be safe, from passive vulnerability to active immunity. This is the transformation that Murphy offered, and it is not a change in your external life, but a change in your internal state. And yet this change in internal state produces dramatic changes in external experience, because the external always reflects the internal when enough time and consistency are applied. The synthesis of power comes from recognizing that everything we have discussed, the concept of vibrational immunity, the ozone layer analogy, the biological validation through immune system function, the fortress protocol, the refinement techniques, the soldier's story. All of these are different expressions of the single principle that consciousness is creative, that frequency determines experience, that you become what you hold in conviction. The shield is not separate from you. The shield is you in your natural state when you are aligned with truth, when you have removed the false identification with vulnerability, when you have claimed your divine heritage as one who dwells under divine law. The message of empowerment that Murphy left for you is both simple and profound. You can walk through the valley of the shadow of death and fear no evil if you know how to command the shield, if you understand the law, if you maintain the conviction with absolute consistency. The valley of the shadow of death is not a metaphor. It is this world, this physical reality, where danger exists, where accidents happen, where violence occurs, where disease spreads, and you are walking through this valley every day. But you do not have to fear evil. You do not have to be vulnerable. You do not have to live in anxiety, because you have been given the knowledge to construct an invisible shield that makes you untouchable. Stop cowering. This is Murphy's command to you, and it is not a suggestion but an imperative, because as long as you cower, as long as you move through the world in fear, as long as you see yourself as a potential victim, you are creating your own vulnerability through the law of consciousness. The universe does not care about your fear. The universe responds to your frequency, and fear is a low frequency that attracts danger. When you stop cowering and start commanding, when you put on the full armor of the mind, not the armor of worry or vigilance, but the armor of conviction and faith, nothing can touch you unless you give it permission through the gate of doubt or judgment. Murphy taught that you are not a powerless biological organism wandering through a hostile universe. You are an expression of infinite intelligence, and that intelligence has equipped you with everything you need to be safe, to be protected, to be immune. But this equipment is not physical, it is mental, it is spiritual, it is vibrational, and you must learn to use it. The Fortress Protocol is your training manual. The refinement techniques are your maintenance procedures, and the validation through science and experience is your proof that the system works. The only variable is you. Will you apply the knowledge with the consistency and conviction required, or will you half-heartedly try it and then abandon it when your doubt creeps in. The empowerment lies in understanding that you are not asking God to protect you. You are recognizing that protection is already yours by law, and you are simply claiming what is already yours. This shifts you from the position of beggar to the position of heir, from one who hopes for favor to one who claims inheritance. When you stand in this empowered position, when you know at the core of your being that you are under divine protection, the shift in your energy is palpable, and everyone around you will feel it even if they cannot name it. They will unconsciously treat you with more respect, move out of your way, avoid confronting you because they sense that you are operating under a different law than they are. Murphy's final message is that protection is not the absence of challenge, but the presence of immunity in the midst of challenge. You will still live in a world where danger exists, but danger will consistently miss you, will bypass you, will somehow fail to manifest in your experience, even when it manifests for everyone around you. This is not about living in a bubble separated from reality. This is about living in a higher reality that exists within the same space as the lower reality, but on a different frequency. And from this higher reality, you can serve, you can help, you can contribute without being dragged down by the chaos you are helping to heal. The challenge is before you now, and it is called the Shielded Walk. I want you to complete this challenge within the next 24 hours, and here is exactly what you will do. Before you leave your house tomorrow, you will execute the complete fortress protocol, the 60-second visualization of the ring of fire or wall of light, the spoken decree of immunity, and the assumption of the untouchable state. You will not rush this, you will give it your full attention and full conviction. And then you will go out into the world, into a crowded place, a shopping center, a busy street, a public event, and you will walk through that crowd in the consciousness of absolute protection. As you walk, you will maintain the inner knowing that you are surrounded by the invisible shield, and you will observe what happens. You will notice that people unconsciously move out of your way before you reach them, that you flow through the crowd without collision or confrontation, that somehow there is always space for you, even in a packed environment. This is not your imagination. This is the shield creating a physical buffer, as people's unconscious awareness picks up the frequency you are broadcasting and adjusts their movement accordingly. You will notice that aggressive individuals do not target you, that pickpockets do not approach you, that the chaos of the crowd somehow fails to touch you, even though you are in the middle of it. The purpose of this challenge is to give you experiential evidence that the shield is real, that it functions according to the principles we have discussed, and that it produces observable results. Murphy knew that intellectual understanding is not enough. You must have direct experience of the law in operation, and this experience will cement your conviction more powerfully than any amount of reading or study. After you complete the shielded walk, come back to the comments and report what you observed, and you will see that others who have completed the challenge report similar experiences, and this shared testimony will further reinforce your conviction and theirs. But the final call to action extends beyond the challenge. If you want to become truly invincible, if you want to master the invisible shield to the point where it operates automatically, where protection becomes your default state, where you move through life with the absolute certainty that nothing can harm you, then you must subscribe to Sacred Logic. This channel exists for one purpose: to teach you the precise mathematical spirituality of the great masters like Joseph Murphy, to reveal the laws that govern manifestation, to train you in techniques that produce results. Each video is a layer of protection added to your consciousness. Each teaching is a reinforcement of your shield, and over time, through consistent exposure to this high-frequency content, you will transform into someone who is literally untouchable. Click the bell icon so you are notified of every new video, because the knowledge that follows will build upon what you have learned here, will layer protocol upon protocol until you have constructed not just a shield, but a complete fortress of consciousness that no negativity can breach. Comment "I am safe" right now to declare your commitment to this work. And as you type those words, feel them sink deep into your subconscious mind, feel the shield activate, feel the shift in your frequency as you claim your divine immunity. The truth Murphy revealed is that you were never meant to live in fear, were never meant to be vulnerable, were never meant to be a target for the chaos of this world. You are a spiritual being under divine law, And that law promises protection, immunity, and absolute safety when you align with it through conviction. The invisible shield is not a gift you must earn. It is a mechanism you must activate, and the activation happens through understanding, through practice, through sustained high-frequency consciousness. You now have the knowledge, you now have the technique, you now have the validation. The only question remaining is, will you use it? Go now and build your fortress. Walk through the world as one who is untouchable, and watch as danger consistently, inexplicably, impossibly misses you again and again, until you can no longer doubt that you are under divine protection. This is your inheritance, this is your power, this is the invisible shield, and it is yours.